All right, nerds, welcome to the newest episode of That Just Happened. This week's episode is Mickey 17, 28 years later on Caddo Lake with Lorna Shore's Crue. That one works better than it should. Lady nerds and fella nerds, you have tuned into the review show that you cannot afford to miss, and I like to call it That Just Happened. It is the review show that is usually late to the party if it shows up at all. We will probably be talking about that thing that just came out, at least to some respect. We will also very likely be talking about a thing that probably happened 4 years ago, and I just now finally got around to digesting it myself. Either way, it will be a good conversation between old friends. So let's talk about that which has happened. Okay, so this is the show, the review show for lazy people, because I don't get to things as quickly as sometimes other review shows do. So this is more of a conversation of things that work, things that didn't, things we like. Music-wise, we do a lot of music stuff. Usually that's pretty up to date. This week we are going to be talking about 28 Weeks Later, which by the time this episode gets edited and uploaded might be a few weeks old at this point, because we are about a week and a half behind on these shows, so I apologize. But again, it's not exactly the most timely show anyway, so there you go. But let's start with music that has come out this week. We have a new track from a relatively new band. The name of the band is Sun Don't Shine. The name of the song is Coming Down. This new project features members who were formerly in Type O Negative and Crowbar, which would be a great combination of music, those two bands put together. And by and large, it really, really is. I'm just not a fan of these vocals. I don't know what it is about older Gen X musicians and like, I don't know, it's like the Life of Agony stuff. Like, Life of Agony used to make better music, and then they just put out that, the last thing that we listened to anyway was the Crow thing, and I just wasn't a fan of the vocals on that either. So like, I don't know. But musically, this is great. So this is kind of a soft recommend. Like, it's cool. It's really interesting to see where the bands that started where the bands that these players started in and where they are now and how that really lines up in a lot of ways. It's really cool to see that. Again, the vocals really weren't doing anything for me. So from there, we got a new Lorna Shore track called Unbreakable. This is the second single off of their upcoming record, I Feel the Everblack Festering Within Me. We're continuing an interesting trend in aggressive music with this track. This is, for Lorna Shore, a little bit more rock and roll. Like, there's a lot more of a easy to follow song structure. Like, yes, I know I've read previously, and we've talked about on the news show, I'm sure, about how Lorna Shore's guitar player, who's the main orchestrator of the music, he likes to at least roughly stick to pop music song structures. Like, I mean, when was the last time you heard an 8-minute pop music song? It's not really a common thing. So like, he takes that fairly loosely. This is a fairly long track in and of itself. It's about 5 minutes long. But of the Lorna Shore kind of oeuvre of music, like, this is a lot more rock and roll than they've offered up previously. And I kind of dig it. Like, I'm a big fan of the progressive kind of like more involved orchestration, more involved plotting of songs, so it's more than just verse, chorus, bridge, etc. But every now and then, like, there's room for a song that is just verse, chorus, bridge, etc. So, and this, I think, is their attempt at that. The previous song they released, Oblivion, was very much the opposite of that. It was a little bit more proggy on the orchestration side, so it makes sense that they would kind of juxtapose the two sides of their sound together with these single releases, and it's a lot of fun. The other thing that was really noteworthy of this track is the lyrical content. A bit more upbeat than we're used to getting from Lorna Shore. Not really dark and death and destruction and witches and whatever the hell they've been singing about for all these years, and lost love and stuff. This is, the name of the track is Unbreakable, and there is a line in there that is repeated multiple times, and that is, we are unbreakable. It is motivating and you get a decent amount of Will's lyrics are rather coherent. They're comprehensible. You can understand what he's saying through all of the crazy growls and the gutturals and stuff. So this is kind of a breath of fresh air in the world of Lorna Shore. This is a wholehearted recommend for sure. Go check it out. Next up is another one that kind of took me a little bit by surprise. This is Papa Roach, their new track Brain Dead. It is featuring Toby Morse, who is the vocalist from the band H2O. Hardcore legends H2O. Their vocalist is doing a track with Papa Roach. And we'll get to his involvement in a moment. Let's just talk about the track in general. This is kind of a return to form for Papa Roach. We have Kobe Dick, which is how Jacoby Shaddix used to be referred to when talking about this stuff, until he told the media, use my proper name because I would rather do that instead of my stage name or whatever. So Kobe Dick is returning, it would seem. And I mean that metaphorically. I don't mean he's asking people to refer to him as that again. I think that style of songwriting is coming back for Jacoby Shaddix. He's back in the rapping. It's much more nu metal sound than what I have heard on recent records from these guys. I haven't really paid the closest attention to stuff that they've done, especially like their previous record. I don't think I heard anything aside from like the last single they released. I don't even remember the name of it, to be honest. So if they made this change, the stylistic change back to where they came from before this track, I am unaware, but as of this track at the very least, they are back in the name, into the nu metal sounds of, you got rap verses and sing choruses. That's the way this goes. As far as the feature goes from Toby Morse, this is kind of another great example of wasting a feature. You have a legendary hardcore vocalist on this track, and his vocal line is almost indiscernible from Jacoby Shaddix's vocals. There's no different EQ. There's nothing that really sets him apart in the mix. He just kind of adds, I think it's only like even a half of a verse or something. Maybe not even that much. It could be the chorus. I'm not 100% not sure of where exactly his vocal is, which is why I think this is a squandered feature, because you have somebody who is noteworthy, incredibly noteworthy in the hardcore scene, and this is how you use them. Like, I don't know. This is a mild recommend because the Papa Roach version of nu metal is not my favorite. I did purchase the Infest record when it came out when I was in junior high school, so whatever year that was. So I was a bigger fan of it back in the day. These days it feels a little tired. But it's a mild recommend. Not if you're a big fan of H2O though. But continuing on, our next one is Pierce the Veil. They did a cover of Radiohead's Karma Police, and this is an interesting example of a cover because there's really not a whole lot of their flavor on top of this track. This is just a straight across cover by and large. There is, obviously, it's not that they didn't do exactly note for note, but like, by and large, this feels like an updated version of the original song rather than like a metal version or whatever. Pierce the Veil isn't exactly the heaviest band around, so it kind of makes sense, but I don't know, it's kind of a cool cover. I dig it. They do it very, very well. The video is also really cool, so for sure go watch that. But this is a pretty good recommend. I would say that the Karma Police cover by Pierce the Veil is for sure worth listening to. And then our final one comes from Motley Crue. Oh boy. Home Sweet Home, it's a re-release of the Home Sweet Home track, and we would not be talking about this in new music things if not for the fact that this also features Dolly Parton on it. So when I saw that, I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then you see, I'm pretty sure, no, it wasn't the thumbnail, but there was still frame on like Metal Injection or something that was announcing that this happened. And it was a picture of Dolly in the studio recording her parts for this. So my assumption going into this was, oh, that's really cool. We get a re-recorded version of Home Sweet Home with Vince Neil's current voice, because that's a whole story in and of itself. But then we also get Dolly's involvement. We're going to get a cool like studio video of them in the studio recording this with Dolly, etc., etc. Nope, that's not what it was at all. It was that with Dolly, sure, there was Dolly in the studio, but it is 100% the original recording, so they didn't re-record shit. And the video is even the original video with Dolly just kind of injected in certain areas. And then also like some statistics about the children running away from home and stuff like that. So like it's not all the old video, but any of the footage of the dudes in Motley Crue is from the original Home Sweet Home video, and they just layered other things on top of it. And that is indicative of where the hell Motley Crue is these days. Like that was, I wanted to be disappointed, but I was like, that's kind of what I was expecting. Honestly, if we really get into my heart of hearts, like I was totally expecting them to do the lazy thing because it's Motley fucking Crue. Who cares? Dolly is always a win. I don't care. If Dolly's on the track, it's worth listening to. But that is the only part of this track that is worth listening to. Good Lord. Why? But that's what we have for music that happened this week. Let's talk about movies this week for me. First one was a movie called Caddo Lake over on Max. It is a Max original from 2024. It didn't really get a whole lot of buzz, as far as I remember anyway, when it launched, but it's a solid movie. Like it's a time warp movie, so kind of know that walking into it. And none of the people in here are super big names. The one lead guy a few years ago when he was a bit younger was in the Maze Runner movies, I'm pretty sure is what it was. But that's kind of the biggest one. One of the girls also has done a couple of things. You'll recognize her face, but that's kind of it. Really, it's just reliant on this really interesting kind of interwoven time warp story that doesn't really show its true colors until you're really into the climax of the movie. If I give you any more details than that, like it will be an absolute spoiler. And I think this is kind of a gem of a movie. Like it is a legitimately enjoyable watch that for some is going to be difficult to kind of parse through exactly what's happening until they reveal exactly what's happening, which I think is a testament to quality filmmaking. If you can see the twist coming a mile away, then that's a poorly done movie. If the only way to understand the movie is for them to force feed it to you, then that's a poorly done movie. This definitely strikes a balance between those two extremes. Like there is enough of a mystery here that you can figure it out in advance if you're really paying attention, but then they also give you the reveal and you saw those clues, so you understand the twist, but the twist isn't exactly what you are expecting. So like, I think it really strikes a good balance between those two extremes. And yeah, I would say this is easy, something to recommend. If you haven't watched it, go watch it. Again, it is on Max, and it has been since last year. So that's one. The next one is newly released on Max. It is the new Bong Joon Ho movie, Mickey 17. Kind of got ripped apart when it was in theaters by reviewers, and I was like, I mean, it's Bong Joon Ho. He did Parasite, which everybody loved, so it's worth a watch if nothing else. Kinda. I was kinda right with that expectation. I think that Robert Pattinson kind of surprises with his ability to in a similar vein to Michael B. Jordan in Sinners. He's effectively Robert Pattinson is effectively playing the same person, but he has to differentiate because there's two versions of the same person. So he has to differentiate characteristics wise. And when dealing with clone things, oftentimes in science fiction, the clones aren't exactly the same because they start out exactly the same, but then they have different lived experiences, or the creation, like in this movie, you see the creation of Mickey 18 and you see there was a hiccup in his creation. So that kind of explains why the differentiation. But Pattinson does a pretty decent job of showing us the differentiation and letting us hear the differences between these two characters as well. So really, really surprising on the part of Pattinson that he made this otherwise fairly mediocre movie work for him in that way. I honestly think the plot is pretty paper thin. It's pretty run-of-the-mill science fiction stuff. Really expected a little bit more high concept from someone like Bong Joon Ho, because Parasite was kind of the penultimate high concept stuff, right? But this is a comedy. To compare those two movies, the Mickey 17 and Parasite, is not fair to the movies themselves. Speaks fairly well to the ability of Bong Joon Ho, because like there were moments in Mickey 17 that I legitimately laughed out loud. I thought it was pretty funny. I think my biggest comment on this, and spoilers, I guess, maybe, but my biggest comment on this is Mark Ruffalo. I don't like Mark Ruffalo. I think the one movie I really liked Mark Ruffalo in was when he was a tertiary character in Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. It's the first time I honestly remember seeing his face in a movie, and it's the one time that I legitimately enjoyed his part in the movie. I think he did fantastically in that movie. As the Hulk, he's done questionably, and in this movie, he does poorly. So it has been said in interviews by the creator, Bong Joon Ho, that when he was writing the character of the leader, I have his name written down in here somewhere, Kenneth Marshall, who's the leader of the expedition to this new planet, his the creation of Kenneth Marshall was he wanted to create an amalgamation of a bunch of world leaders and all of the negative character personality traits that Bong Joon Ho saw in all of these world leaders. That was the idea. Mark Ruffalo didn't get the memo and is trying to do a Trump impersonation very, very poorly. This goes to show that when doing parody, you must understand the source that you are parodying in order to do a good and funny parody, because largely what Ruffalo is doing here is the caricature of nothing that a lot of more lefty type people think that Donald Trump is. Like it's the stupid way he holds his mouth agape. Some of the vocal inflection in some of the scenes is like him doing a Trump impersonation, and it's painfully obvious that that's what Ruffalo wanted this character to be. But I mean, we could get into a whole discussion about that. But either way, that's of course that's what he thinks it is. Anyway, Mickey 17 is not bad. It's not good. It's not great, I guess you should say. It's okay. If you like science fiction, you like really cool creature creation stuff, there's the creatures in this movie are really cool. The concept, the much broader strokes of the concept of this movie is fairly familiar, but a relatively unique take on something that is familiar if you read or interact with a lot of science fiction content. So like it'll be familiar territory, but it's a really cool kind of take on something we've seen a few times. So it's worth it for that. I really feel like there's a lot of issues with this movie. Other actors in the movie, Steven Yeun is in this movie and he's fine, but he's only in it for like 5 minutes grand total. And like he's a despicable character, but he does really good at being a despicable character. I kind of wish they had utilized him a little bit more. They didn't. It is what it is. So yeah, very mild, kind of put this one on as background noise kind of recommendation. And then our final movie, 100% spoilers. We're going to get into spoiler territory for 28 Years Later. We're going to talk about this, and I want to address some of the more conspiratorial, more conservative, more Comicsgate angles that people are taking with this, and how I feel like some of them are accurate, but by and large, it's just people looking for something to be offended at or looking to be the first to shit on something that is pretty decent. So 28 Years Later, if you haven't seen it and you care about spoilers, this is your warning. All right, so there is a lot of negative hype about this movie, and it's doing moderately well from what I saw from the last numbers report. So existence of the trilogy moving forward, probably they'll get greenlit to do the other 2 movies. Like, it seems to be on track for that, though not doing as well as maybe they had hoped. I watched it last night. I think that it's better than I anticipated. It's different than the first movie, so it's hard to say which of the 2 of them is better. And also, there's a lot of people saying that it kind of ignores the second movie, which is fair, but it's not 100% accurate because they use footage from the second movie in this. It's just how the second movie ends is the thing that they fully ignore, because the second movie ends and the rage virus has made it to mainland Europe and is in France, and France falls. That's like the last frame of the second movie, which came out like a decade ago. So if that's a spoiler for you, you're not keeping up. But over a decade ago even. But in the beginning premise of this movie is that the rage virus never left the British Isles. It is only in the UK, and it has not made mainland in Europe at all. So yes, to a degree, they are ignoring the second movie, but again, they do use footage from the second movie. So to a certain degree, both stances are right. So that is what it is. The basic premise for this movie is you have a coming-of-age story for this 12-year-old kid. I didn't write any characters' names down. I'm sorry, but we're just going to have to deal with that. So it's a coming-of-age story of this kid. And I'll do my best to kind of differentiate things. The way that the kid lives in a village that is on a very small island off the coast of mainland UK, mainland Britain, if you will. They are connected by a causeway to Britain, to the UK, that is only exposed for a certain amount of time during the day because high tide and low tide. So if it's high tide, you can't get to you can't see the causeway because the water's too high, and you'll get swept away in the tide. If you try and walk, because you won't be able to. It's too deep. But then at low tide, it's exposed. You've got about 12 inches worth of land, this land bridge that connects these 2 islands effectively. So the village that the kid lives on is on the smaller island off the side of the UK. This community has a coming-of-age ritual for the young men in the community where they go to mainland and kill some of the zombies, for lack of a better word. We'll get to the use of the word zombies in a minute, but for the sake of the synopsis, we're going to call them zombies. Because they go to the mainland and they kill a handful of zombies, and they come back. You have approximately 4 hours between low tide and high tide, so you go on land, kill some zombies, come back, everybody celebrates you, you're a man now. Usually this happens when the kid is in their older teens, so 16 is usually when it starts. They make a strong point of pointing that out to you in the movie. Kind of factors in later, but we'll get there. And so this kid is 12 years old. His dad is played by Aaron Taylor Johnson. Dad thinks that the kid is ready for the coming of age experience, and so he takes him to mainland a few years before his time, and there's issues. They run into issues because things need to happen in order to move the plot forward, and it's good. It's very enjoyable. The first half an hour of this movie, I feel like, is universally loved, even by the people who think that the movie is woke, which, again, if you think this is woke, maybe we weren't watching the same movie. So They get their kills, they get caught up, they have to stay the night. It's tense, it's very, very tense, honestly. It's a very good job of making this tense. And then they come back effectively the next morning and they're safe, and this big drama thing that happens. You learn that there are different kinds of infected on the island, different kinds of zombies. Again, we'll call them zombies for the sake of this. You have alphas, who are, they explain later in the movie that it's basically the virus interacts with their biochemistry kind of like steroids. So they're basically roid rage, and they're giant muscled creatures effectively. And then you have just the average zombie type, which is the runners, the quick ones. And then you have these slow ones where it kind of has the inverse effect on the physicality, where they just become morbidly obese and they're basically crawling around on their bellies eating bugs. And so you have different varying kinds of the infected. So one of the alphas is what causes all of the tension from that first experience. And then throughout the course of the night, where they're stuck on the mainland, the kid sees fire off in the distance, and dad kind of ignores it, brushes it aside, oh, it's nothing, don't worry about it, effectively. Then we find out that kid's mom, well, we kind of find this out in the beginning. Kid's mom is very, very sick and needs a doctor, but all of the doctors on the island are dead or gone or didn't make it, whatever. So the fire off in the distance, the kid asks one of the other adults what that might be, and the other adult is older and so has a better memory of history and says, oh, that was Dr. Kelso or something. Kelsey, something. And so the kid gets hopeful because that's a doctor. So gets the wild idea to take his mom onto the mainland to go see the doctor because she's sick. And this is one of the issues that we have with the story. We'll come back to it. Gets his mom onto the mainland. Crazy things happen. We get a military dude involved who is from Sweden. We have a number of military units on the island, or military people on the island, but only one of them makes it to meet our main characters, and then he doesn't make it out of the movie. But it gives us a little bit of context because they're quarantined on the British Isles. So the kid that is the military kid, he is part of the quarantine patrol, making sure that nobody is leaving the island so that they won't infect mainland, which is how we know that the mainland in Europe has not been affected, because hence the patrols, which is kind of the entire purpose of his being in this, aside from being a weapon for an alpha later, but that's, again, a whole other thing. So we get the kid, we run into a pregnant zombie. The infected gives birth to the baby, it gets dead, and so now we have a baby in the mix, and we're heading to a doctor. Military kid dies, make it to the doctor. Doctor diagnoses mom with cancer and then kills mom because that's the humane way. She euthanizes mom, if you will. Again, that's one of the issues we'll come back to. The doctor then almost dies, sends the kid back home with the baby. Kid drops the baby, leaves a note for dad that says, I have to go do my own thing. And then he goes back to the mainland and is basically adventuring on the mainland. And that's roughly where it ends. I mean, there's a bit more there, but that's kind of the broad strokes of the movie. So the issues that people are taking with this, the relationship between Aaron Taylor Johnson as the dad and then the kid, there is a very brief moment of frustration that the dad strikes the kid. He smacks the kid in the face and punches a wall as he's leaving the scene. So that's being taken from the conservative reviewers of this as they're demasculating him. They're making the dad the issue, he's also a drunk. And he also is sleeping around on the kid's mom because she's sick, so she can't do the adult thing, apparently, is the assumption. So he's finding other adults who will do the adult thing with him, right? So that is, in the eyes of the Comicsgate types, as we're just making him a horrible person, and so that's one of the reasons why it's woke. Another reason, and this one's kind of the more comical reason, another reason why it's woke is because the infected, the zombies, are largely naked, because at this point it's been years and years and years. So what clothes they had are falling to tatters or have been ripped off through interaction with other infected, through just their manner of being infected, or through what have you, any number of reasons, right, why they would not be clothed. And they don't care enough to put clothes on because they're crazed and zombies, effectively. So because all of these zombies are naked, we have, therefore, a lot of male members flapping in the running of the zombies. And one of the reviews I read of this complained that it was a lot of peens just everywhere, just flapping about, and you don't really get any naked female zombies. And to which I say, again, I don't think we watched the same movie, because there were, I don't know that it was equal numbers, but that's kind of a silly argument to make, because there were definitely naked lady zombies, and one very specifically gives freaking birth on screen. So like, there's also somebody taking issue with what they viewed as tree hugger kind of environmental issues with this, and I didn't catch any of that. They weren't really doing any sort of environmental stuff that I saw in this. There are definitely alphas that are fully nude in this with very large members, which again, I mean, I don't know if it reacts to the body like steroids. It should have gone the opposite way, but it's like steroids. It's not actually steroids. So maybe that's the way the one infected got pregnant, perhaps. I don't know. But I mean, it is what it is. The baby that she has is not infected, which I think is a interesting thing that they went with, because that's never happened before, blah, blah, blah. The other issue, and this I think is the one that has the most legs, is when they go see the doctor, and the doctor diagnoses mom with cancer, and we see the doctor take the head of the military kid, because the alpha rips, they're a big fan in this movie of taking heads off of things with the spine intact, a la Mortal Kombat fatality style, which I think was great. Like, if you're looking for some gore, there's some excellent gore in this movie. If you are a gore hound, you will not be disappointed with this. So it happens multiple times to multiple people, to a deer at one point, or an antelope, or whatever the hell that was. They rip the head off of this thing, and the spine stays attached, and they put it up in a tree, and it's a whole thing. But they do that to the military kid, and then he uses the head as a weapon on multiple occasions, which I find incredibly hilarious. So when we meet the doctor, they have this kid's head. They got it from the alpha. The alpha drugs the doctor drugs the alpha and uses horse tranquilizers effectively to put it to sleep, even though he's standing. And then so the doctor takes the skin off the head. He steam boils. What am I trying to say? Pressure cooks the head over a flame and gets all of the viscera and skin and muscles and everything off of the head. And the skull should not be white. I understand that. Like, scientifically speaking, if you want to bleach a bone of any kind, skull included, like, it takes weeks and months to sun bleach something properly. You can't pressure cook a bone and have it come out perfectly white. That's not how it necessarily works. It would be pink, but for the sake of the movie, and you don't want to have to show the whole process and so on and so forth, because narratively would take freaking ever. That's why they did what they did. So you see how he cleans skulls. He has the whole monument to death. It's a memento mori that he's created, that he basically lives in. And they add the military kid's skull to the stack, which we talked about when we were breaking down the trailer, which I think I was pretty close on some of those projections on what was going to happen in the trailer. And then he diagnoses mom with cancer, and they drug the kid, because the kid starts freaking out because he doesn't know how to deal with that, because he's 12 years old. 12-year-old kid's going to get some crazy ideas. 12 years old can't deal with the idea that mom will die in the not too distant future because she has cancer. So they drug the kid to calm him down with the horse tranquilizers, which I don't know if he would have stayed awake, if he would have stayed conscious with that kind of horse tranquilizer, because they put to sleep, quote unquote, an alpha, which outweighs the kid probably 5-1, has the rage virus pumping through his veins, and it still took him out. So presumably the same dose into this 12-year-old kid that weighs like 85 pounds soaking wet probably would have affected him a lot more, which is a little bit weird that they did it at all. And so while he's in his drugged stupor, because he's still awake, he's still coherent, he's still aware of things going on around him, he's just calmer, which again seems really weird. The doctor plays Dr. Kevorkian, and it was played by Ralph Fiennes, who did a fantastic job. I wanted more Ralph Fiennes in this movie. And Jodie Comer is the mom. Jodie Comer also does amazing things on screen. But she walks away and the doctor takes her out, like Jack Kevorkian. Like, you don't see it happen, but they disappear, and the doctor comes back with her skull moments later. Didn't even like have the same amount of time to pressure cook her skull like he did the military kid. And the little kid, still in a drugged up state, is okay with it, which understandably he's in a drugged up state, but like that should have been a bigger issue when he sobered up. Like there's this whole subplot right here with mom's cancer, I think honestly could have been avoided, could have been told in a better way, could have been, I don't know. The main purpose of mom having cancer was to get them to go to the doctor so that they could get the baby. Because the baby was the reason the kid went back to the island, because he didn't want to be with his dad anymore because dad's violent and kind of a drunk, which you're dealing with a post-apocalyptic world. How many people aren't going to have short fuses and potentially an alcohol problem? I don't think that is an indictment on the character of the father necessarily. I think that's an indictment of the world that they've set up. Anyway, so kid's okay with mom's death. Like that whole scene, that whole subplot, again, there should have been a much more tense ending to that. And I feel like it was kind of just glossed over, which again, on the conservative side of things, the comic geek side of things, is being taken as kind of an anti-human piece of narrative, because the human euthanasia is not something that those type of people necessarily take too well to. I understand the argument. I don't necessarily take too well to that idea either. Somebody with cancer being euthanized, I think there's the spiritual side of me just feels like that's wrong on a lot of levels. So I get the argument. So that, again, that's kind of the one that I agree with. They could have done something there that would have been more effective, like affecting even, like if mom had been taken out by the alpha, because she is in a state, a mental state, where sometimes she can't function, she can't move. She was being carried by the military kid for a good chunk of their trip into the mainland to find the doctor. So narratively, it would have fit better in a horror movie if she was taken out by the infected to some degree, and not by Dr. Kevorkian. Like that just is a poorly made choice, I think, on the point of the director and the writers. The characters or the actors did what they could with him. The other point that I think a lot of people are taking issue with, that I also understand and that I think I agree with, is how this 12-year-old kid thought it was a good idea to try and take his mom to the mainland at all, considering the fact that she, the large portion of the time, is not mobile by himself. Like if he could talk his dad into it, that would have made a little bit more sense. Then we would have gotten more Aaron Taylor Johnson, which would have made for a little bit better story. You could have potentially given the Aaron Taylor Johnson character more of a story arc, more of a character arc, because he could have started out as this this drunk, potentially abusive father, and then come to grips with the things that he's done and apologize to his wife through the journey of going to find the doctor, because that still would have been incredibly tense. You wouldn't have needed necessarily the military kid, because he didn't really further the plot at all, aside from showing us that the doctor could pressure cook a skull and bleach it in a matter of 20 minutes. Like that's the only thing that he did for the narrative, and that's unnecessary. So if we had taken Aaron Taylor Johnson's dad character to the mainland, if the kid had convinced dad to do that with him, that I think would have been potential for a better story to be told. The story we got is a 12-year-old kid with zero experience, well, with a singular experience on the mainland, tricked an entire village of adults into ignoring their one way onto the island. Yes, I get it. It was a fire, but like, again, this is an entire village. There were more people that could have attended to that fire rather than the people that were watching the entrance of the village. So this 12-year-old kid tricked an entire village of people into not paying attention to this front door so that he could get his mom from somewhere near the center of the village off of the island into the mainland. That just seems highly improbable. If we had involved the dad character, it would have made a lot more sense as far as that is concerned. It also would have given a better narrative, because dad would have had a character arc. Like that's the better way to have done this. They didn't do that, and apparently that means this is a woke movie. No, I think that's just a poor plot choice on the part of the writer and the director. Like that's That's all that is. And then it ends, and then we get introduction to Jimmy. There's allusions to Jimmy throughout the entire movie once we hit land with Aaron Taylor Johnson and the kid. And then we finally meet Jimmy at the end of the movie, and it's quite the meeting. This movie, I think one of the biggest issues here is a tonal issue, because there are moments in this movie where it plays out as kind of an action horror. There are moments in this movie where there's even comedy element to it. Even some of the infected, the zombie alpha type, there's certain elements of that are kind of played to a comedic effect. And then when we meet Jimmy, it's full on comedy. So, like, I think there's a tonal issue here, but by and large, this is still a fine entrant into the overall zombie genre, because this, again, I know they're not. Oh, that was the other thing I wanted to address. So, zombies. These are not zombies. These are infected. They differ in very minor way, in that they're not actually dead, whereas zombies are dead. So the only way to stop a zombie, i.e. kill a zombie, is to sever their head. In most zombie lore, I don't know that there's any other zombie lore, aside from maybe like pre-Romero voodoo zombies, where there's any other way to kill a zombie. In basically all zombie lore, you remove the head or you sever the spine to a certain degree, and that's what stops a zombie. The infected, being as they are technically alive, the rage virus that has infected them gives them a lot more. They can endure a lot more horrible things like starvation and so on and so forth, and apparently suffocation, because we have a number of them that are suffocated to a certain degree. We have one of them that has a bag taped over his head and is still alive. So they can endure a lot more, but there are two ways to kill them. You can take out their heart or you can take out their head. It can be either, and that will stop the infected. So really, that's the only differentiation, is how you kill infected versus zombies. You have one extra option instead of just severing the head. So, and we do get character, singular, in this movie who refers to the infected as zombies. However, I don't think that is an endorsement of this property as calling the infected zombies, because the character that does it is the kid, the military kid, who's coming from Sweden, who only knows about these things through word of mouth, effectively. He's only heard things. Presumably he's on some sort of like internet forums, and he's reading all about the horrors that are the British Isles these days in the world. And so they call the infected zombies because they don't know that there is a difference. So it is an unreliable source of information that calls these creatures zombies and not infected. Therefore, I don't think that is an endorsement by the people in charge of the franchise as calling their infected zombies. I don't think that's what that is. Even though a couple of people have kind of jumbled that information, like that's not an endorsement for them to be called zombies. They are infected. They make very clear that these are infected and they are alive, because that's how you take them out. So that's where we sit with that. So, long rambling review of this, of some of the silly details here. I legitimately think this is a great entrant into the zombie genre. I know, again, technically not zombies, but for most intents and purposes, they are zombies. So wholeheartedly recommend, if you haven't seen this movie, please go see it. I think that we need to vote with our wallets for stuff like this, because I'm honestly a fan of the 28 Days Later franchise. I think the 28 Weeks Later movie is the weakest entry so far by a good amount, but is still an enjoyable zombie movie. There's things in even that second movie that I think are good contributions to the zombie genre as a whole. So I'm a fan, and I really, really like this. I don't know if I would necessarily go so far as to say it's better than the first one, but I think there's a strong argument to be made that it is on the level with the first one. Like I could see how that could be argued. So yeah, fully recommend you go see 28 Years Later. Very intrigued to see because there are going to be 2 more movies. There's going to be a trilogy. This is the first of the trilogy. So 2 more movies in this trilogy. Conflicting reports as to where Cillian Murphy is going to come back, but Cillian Murphy is an executive producer on the project as a whole. He is also coming back in at least one of the next 2 movies. I heard reports that it was going to be the next movie, and then I heard other reports still saying that it's going to be the 3rd movie. So one of the next 2 movies we'll see Cillian Murphy's character come back, which I think will be interesting, and I'm very curious how they do that. But as far as the review goes, go see it. I loved it. I'm probably it's going to be one that I add to my collection just because, again, I'm a fan of the franchise. So that is how I interpreted it. What did you think of your viewing of any of this stuff? Honestly, talk about any of the things we've talked about in this episode. As far as things yet to come, we have Social Distortion, a concert happening very soon, so that's going to be something we talk about. I promise I will make it through. We have The Bear. We're going to definitely be talking about The Bear next week, or in 2 weeks, whenever the hell this gets edited and published. So that's on the docket. We have quite a bit coming up. So what's coming up for you? Let me know down in the comments section. I want to have that conversation. Do you agree or disagree with me as far as any of the stuff we've talked about here on the episode today? That is where this episode ends. I've spent way too much time talking about that movie, but I appreciate your faces, nerds. We will see you in the next one. Before we go, don't forget to like, subscribe, do all of the things. Share the show with everyone you know, because that is the way that shows like this grow. And we'll see you in the next one. Before we go, always remember that if it's generally nerdy, it's probably here, and that just happened.